As a companion to our trainings, we developed a set of practical tools and templates and activities to help staff be more intentional in how we support social emotional learning with the young people that we work with. And this video series provides an overview of what you'll find in this freely available resource. Our toolkit is organized around these 4 strategies. Today's video is going to focus on creating the learning environment. So what are the ways that social emotional learning can be caught in the learning environment through things like our norms, our routines, our behavior expectations. So how can social emotional learning be supported not just through explicit activities focused on skill building, but really in how we create the learning environment when we come together with young people. The environment and culture of your program play an important part in social and emotional learning. You can influence the culture or norms of your program by paying attention to the ways that routines, behavior expectations, and conflict resolution processes within your program support social and emotional learning. So this section includes tools and templates to help staff establish group and individual level expectations, to give effective feedback, and to integrate reflection. So let's walk through the items that you'll find in this section. So the skill building plan is to be used during like a one-on-one conversation with a young person to discuss a specific social and emotional skill. This was actually a tool that was developed by a program in our community to help when there was behavior issues. They would work with a student and help the student establish what they thought the consequence should be for their behavior. So working off of that model, the tool is helpful for young people who are having a difficulty meeting some kind of behavior expectation, and the template helps youth reflect on their social and emotional skill growth and creates accountability for their actions and a plan for the future. So again, they're reflecting on the situation and planning for the future by walking through this set of questions. The next activity is the full value contract, which you can use as a discussion guide with youth to really establish group norms and common expectations. So you write the agreement on a piece of paper, and youth are going to read, sign, and follow for the duration of your program or your classroom. And depending on the length and location of your program, the contract can be large and posted on at that location, or it might be kind of a small mobile contract that you bring with you. But remember, setting clear expectations is an important step to create a positive social and emotional learning environment, and that youth input really fosters their ownership, right, and creates a sense of commitment to those ground rules and shared values. So establishing norms and agreements that are grounded in a group's own words and experiences can really help create a safe and inclusive environment. So teaching your staff team how to give effective feedback is one way that you can equip staff with a strategy to support social and emotional learning. We chose this specific strategy because effective feedback is one of the most powerful influences on learning. For practitioners, giving useful feedback is a critical skill to develop. And simply put, feedback is information about how we're doing in our effort to reach our goal, right? And so we like to remind people, though, that feedback is not advice about what to do. Really, it's concrete information shared with the purpose of helping another person evaluate their progress towards a goal. So if we look at this example, same situation, but an advice response might sound more like, when you get mad during the pickup game, you can't push people around. You ruin the game for everyone. You really need to figure out how to control your temper. Whereas a feedback response might sound more like, when you got fouled during the pickup game yesterday, I noticed that you shoved Mario and walked away. I was hoping you'd use the strategies we've been working on to control your anger. What was going on yesterday? So as you can see, even with just subtle changes, these have a very different kind of effect on the person hearing them, right? The first is much more accusatory. There's lots of sort of finger pointing and lots of you statements, whereas the feedback conversation is much more about describing the facts, naming the expectation, and then asking a question to really open up a feedback conversation. So for us, And the tool that you'll find in the toolkit then is a guide for how to frame a feedback conversation that has 3 components: the describing what happened, naming what your skill expectation would be, and asking a question. All right, another activity you'll find in our toolkit is the conflict traffic light. It's important to just remember that conflict is inevitable, right? As practitioners, we have an opportunity, though, to really frame that conflict as a learning opportunity rather than just seeing it as a negative experience that we need to get through. So by discussing emotions in our everyday practice, staff can help youth better regulate their emotions. When youth learn emotion management, they're able to more fully participate in the program and able to find their way through conflict. So this conflict traffic light is a way to develop a system to really pause when emotions are escalating and ask youth who are involved in the conflict to use this stoplight analogy to discuss their emotional readiness to process that conflict. So you ask sort of what color they're feeling. And when staff and youth determine they're green, that provides then an opportunity for youth to process the situation. And this may best happen one-on-one or within the group, depending on how safe the youth feel with the situation. But staff need to be able to take the time and be thoughtful about what might work best in their program and really be able to ask the youth what happened, identify emotions that they're experiencing, and maybe ask youth to describe even the intensity of the emotion, like on a scale of 1 to 5, how are they feeling? If the youth report that they're yellow, you might ask the youth how many minutes they need to be ready to process the conflict, right? And let the group know that sometimes we need a few minutes to kind of let our emotions settle. And then when they're ready, they will proceed to green. But if red, then we need to talk about how important it is to take a break and really cool down before we process conflict. So it's just a helpful gauge to sort of see where people are at and make sure we're going to make sure people are ready to dig in and process the conflict before we start posing those kinds of questions with those involved. Another example is the conflict resolution process that is used by, this is a Voyager Outward Bound school uses this strategy when there are kind of one-on-one conflicts. It's called a CFR, a complaint feeling request process. And so the individuals involved meet together and work through this simple process. So like with the basketball example a few minutes ago, both youth would get together and the one who states the complaint would tell the other person how they felt and then make the request for next time, what they would like to see happen. So this process really helps manage conflict in a more productive and healthy way and helps youth really feel like they can count on this tool as a consistent routine when conflict arises. So in the example for the Voyager Outward Bound School, they could say, hey, I've got a CFR. And so it's sort of a language that people understand for like, okay, here's how we're going to process with me kind of issuing what I'm concerned about, how it's making me feel, and what I wish could happen. This section of the toolkit also has a number of kind of icebreaker activities that have been modified to really have an SEL spin on them. So really trying to incorporate social emotional learning concepts into our daily programs routines is one important strategy for sort of helping create the learning environment, right? So we have included a human bingo game, which is like kind of a classic icebreaker with get to know you kinds of questions, but instead of having it be things like find someone with green eyes or find someone who's been to Hawaii, we're going to say find someone who prefers to work with groups, or find someone who is who's good at sticking with a goal, things like that. So they're SEL skill related. Another example is the Would You Rather game, which is really around having participants discover things that they have in common or might not be obvious otherwise, and have conversations around SEL concepts, values, and preferences. So again, you're going to ask would you rather questions, but instead of it being, would you rather have pizza or spaghetti, it's things like, would you rather give advice or receive feedback? Would you rather start a project or finish a project? Would you rather work on a project on your own or with a team? And when you have strong emotions, would you rather share them or keep them to yourself? Another icebreaker activity is a modified version of the JENGA game. So this again is around really helping young people build rapport, encourage self-expression, and share and gather information in a more engaging way. So there are questions that correspond with each of the JENGA pieces. So you can number them. And then when someone pushes out number 37, you read the question that corresponds with that. And the questions are things like, what's something that you did that you're proud of? What calms you down when you get mad or upset? What's one thing you wish more people knew about you? Or how would you tell someone that they hurt your feelings? So again, helping practice and reinforce some of these SEL skills and concepts. We developed an emoji reflection template to build in regular self-reflection throughout a project. And you can change the top anchor statement to align with what you're doing in your program. Here it's about, well, working on your film project this week, did you feel in control of your emotions? But you might have a different context and even a different target statement that you might use. But what you do is ask the young people to kind of circle or reflect on how they were feeling about that particular thing in any given, say, week or time period. We did test this with young people, and they wanted to make sure that there was a open emoji where they could express the feeling they wanted, not just be bound to the 5 we have in our scale. And some people prefer to be more narrative in their response, so the backside of this tool has just some open-ended space as well. But this can be used as a kind of one-on-one check-in with young people, and it also might help facilitate group discussions and helps kind of track young people's awareness of their feelings about the film project, as well as giving you some information that can be useful. Then we also have a reflection bank where we kind of just list out a variety of reflection activities that can be used depending on whether you have a couple of minutes, 5 to 10 minutes, or even 15 or more minutes. So things like identifying what the rose or highlight is, the thorn or challenge, and the bud, what's something new you're looking forward to, is one kind of common reflection activity we might use. And others are talking about maybe using the weather words as ways to describe how things were going. Were we stormy? Was it partly sunny with a chance of rain, right? So I'd like you to now take some time to think about what are some ways that you can build reflection into your program. What are maybe some built-in routines or expectations? Do you have a conflict resolution process in place that helps support social emotional learning, or that perhaps could be, with slight modifications, still be able to reinforce social emotional learning through that routine, right? Are there ways that you can tweak it in order to be more intentional about supporting social emotional learning? Okay, so let's close out our video today with some of the frequently asked questions around this section of the toolkit, creating the learning environment. So the first question is, how can I integrate SEL into what I'm already doing? And I would say you certainly don't need to have a separate social emotional learning curriculum. I think the goal is really to try to infuse intentionally social emotional skill building opportunities into what you're already doing. And so you're not working harder, you're working smarter. But if you've got young people coming together and they're working on a project, you're thinking purposefully about teamwork skills, conflict resolution, right? If they're laying out a time frame, you're having them set goals and thinking about time management. So you're building these things into existing opportunities. The next question is, well, feedback's great, but sometimes don't we need to give advice? And I would say sure, but I would maybe encourage you to start with the feedback. I think it's really important to begin with questions, getting to hear the young person's perspective before we jump into telling them ours. And I would say, thinking about asking them if they would like or are open to our feedback is a great entree, as opposed to just jumping straight to that role. The third frequently asked question is, how can I diffuse conflict in a way that supports social emotional learning? And I would say, just remembering that reframing conflict is really your best opportunity to think about social emotional skill building, right? Being able to take the time, however, to really carve out that space for young people to dig in and identify their emotions, think about how they're managing them, think about what their strategies are, how they're going to respond, It can feel like things are derailed, but it's actually, as I said, one of the best opportunities to really get to practice in a real world way how we're thinking about our emotions and how we manage them, and really apply our social emotional skills to that situation. And then finally, why is reflection so important? Reflection activities really allow young people to think intentionally about making meaning out of what their experience has been, right? What have they learned? And so how young people respond during reflection activities can also give you as staff great insights and feedback into how things are going and where you might need to make adjustments or follow up. Right? All right, so that is the end of our second video on creating the learning environment. You can again download the toolkit at this link.